The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Preparing for the IEP, presented by Shirley Swope. My name is Pam Christie. I'll be the moderator, and I'm the PTI director here at Peak. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. If you are connected to today's webinar through the internet, you should see your attendee interface or control panel in the upper right-hand corner of your own computer's desktop. By default, you are listening in to today's webinar using your computer's speaker system. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your control panel and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into either the questions pane or the chat of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and the presenter and I will be monitoring the questions and we will address them as we go. We might have time at the end, and if we don't, then you can always call one of our parent advisors after the webinar and ask them your question. Handouts, there's 5 of them, are available for download in the handout window. One of those handouts is this PowerPoint. As you leave today's webinar, you will receive an evaluation survey about the presentation. We would appreciate it if you would just take a minute to complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email very soon with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. So again, welcome to Preparing for the IEP, and it's my pleasure to introduce Shirley, who will take it from here.
Hi, everyone. We're so glad that you could join us. And because of the virus, Pam and I both are working from home. So this is a new adventure for us, but we think it's going to work well. So let's get started. Today, our webinar, we're going to talk about preparing the IEP, content of the IEP. Well, we have 3 in this series, and today is preparing for the IEP. The next week will be content of the IEP, and then the last one will be implementation and follow-up to the IEP. So today's webinar, we're just looking at the basics of understanding how this whole process works, this individualized education program, or IEP. And the getting started, just understanding the basics, then the evaluation and consent for evaluation, how that works. Eligibility, just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you would qualify for an IEP. You have to meet criteria that states that it interferes with your ability to learn or your child's ability to learn. The importance of communication, and then some tips for preparing for this IEP meeting. So the purpose of the law is that children with disabilities have a right to receive education and to receive a good education, including general education curriculum, and that they're to be educated with their peers who do not have disabilities. Because in the real world, we're all living together, and people with disabilities live alongside us, work with us, and are citizens as we are citizens of this great country. And the purpose of the law was to provide services and supports that children with disabilities might require so that they can learn and can become productive adults and contribute to the community. And the law also ensures that parents are an equal partner in this education process. This is the only law that states that parents are part of the educational team, and that parents have a role to play along with educators in this education process. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act IDEA that has two very fundamental requirements. The first is the requirement for a free, appropriate public education. Free meaning that you don't have to pay for anything that is above and beyond what you would normally pay for in educating a general education student. And in the least restrictive environment, which is we'll talk about that. The least restrictive environment means you have access to general education with supports in that arena. Across the nation, the Andrew case, Andrew was a young man a boy who had autism or has autism, and his parents had to sue the go-do process all the way up to the Supreme Court to get a free, appropriate public education for their son. And what came out of that case was that you can't just have the minimum education anymore. It's not just babysitting. It really means that we want to educate your child to have a chance to become an adult who can work, who can function, who can live in the community as independently as possible, and not just stagnate at school year after year with the very same goals on the IEP, working on one aspect of your IEP and not really branching out into academics. And with Andrew, the school district kept working on behavior and had him in an area or a classroom strictly for students with behavior issues and autism, and didn't really address academics, and he wasn't making progress. Then his parents enrolled him in a private school. He made progress both academically and behaviorally. And then they went back to their district to ask for reimbursement for that. It went down to the Supreme Court, and after 7 years, they were reimbursed. And the Supreme Court said that minimum education is not appropriate, and that you really should, in light of the child's disability, have him make as much progress forever. And that some of the really important things I think we need to look at when you look at this slide is that focus on the child's current circumstance instead of the forever diagnosis. I think that's really important. We don't know what the future holds. We want to move forward in a really positive way and have high expectations for children to learn. And when we have high expectations for children to learn, then they often rise to the occasion. And I think that was one of the really important lessons of the Andrew case, was to have high expectations, expect a good education, and expect progress in school in learning. So to start to this whole process, the child must have an evaluation or have a need for an evaluation to determine if the child has a disability under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And does that disability interfere with that child's ability to learn at school? So schools can ask for the evaluation, and if that's the case, the school must notify the parents that they suspect a disability and would like to have an evaluation or assessment, and that they're going to use a variety of tools to assess the child to see how the disability affects that child's ability to learn. It should be non-discriminatory or have racial or cultural biases, because we want to look at that child's ability to learn within his culture and within his language too. And then parents are to be given a copy of any evaluation reports with an explanation of that report. So, and that's very important to understand what they're looking at and how it affects that child's learning ability. So an evaluation has to happen before a child enters special education and has special education services. We're living in a very stressful time right now and a very unusual time. So things may look a little different right now, but all of us have to have some patience here. It won't last forever. So if you are asking for an evaluation today, you're just going to have to work with your school district on how to make that happen. And the school districts still have an obligation to provide that. However, they also have an obligation to their staff to keep them safe and to follow the rules that the state dictates at the time as far as social distancing and those kind of things. So it's going to be a time when we all need to be flexible and creative. But evaluations still need to happen sometime. You can have evaluation not more than once a year unless the school and parent agrees otherwise. Many reasons, well, one of the reasons for that is some evaluations will be voided or nulled if it's given within 12 months. So that's something to consider too. Then once every 3 years, unless parents and schools agree it's not needed. When the law started, it was really important that we have this process of keeping track of the child's progress, but also looking at that whole evaluation thing. Because a 3-year-old is not a 6-year-old, a 6-year-old is not a 9-year-old, a 9-year-old is not a 12-year-old. So it was really important to track growth throughout the school year. I mean, throughout the child's school career, I guess you could say. So that 3-year rule was kind of put in place. For some children, it's for reevaluation to see if they still qualify for special education services. Some children with emotional disabilities who've experienced a lot of trauma and qualified for emotional disability at one time may not qualify in 3 years for that same disability label. Another child with a learning disability may not qualify in 3 years for being a child with a learning disability that has a profound effect on his ability to learn at school. So there are reasons that we had those 3 years evaluations for that purpose also. Other children will always qualify for special education services because of their disability, deafness, blindness, things like that are going to stay with the child for life. So when we do a reevaluation, we're looking at how the child is functioning right now in school. We're looking at existing data. And if the parent has data, the parent needs to share that data. Data can be, looks like his grades are, his homework's going pretty well, seems to understand it at home, or homework is really stressful, does not understand homework, and we're reteaching every night. That's data, both sides of it. Then we have to determine if the child has a disability still. Does that learning disability still interfere with his ability to learn? Does the child's deafness still interfere with the child's ability to learn? And what are the child's needs? Then we look at those present levels of achievement. Where is the child right now in school and in learning? Are we learning at grade level? Are we several kind of years behind? What does that look like? Are we making progress that we'd hope to make according to the child's individualized education program, or IEP? And what kind of special education does this child need? Where is that specialized instruction? Where does that child need that specialized instruction? Is it in academic achievement? Do we really, math makes no sense, so we're really struggling in math? Or, his behaviors, his functional performance at school, that's really interfering with his ability to learn at school. So what are those needs that require specialized instruction for special education? And if changes are needed to meet the goals that we're looking at and to participate in general curricula. So what's going on with the child? What does the picture, his day look like right now? How is he functioning? How does he feel about school? And are we making progress? Then consent for services. Parents need to give permission before any kind of special education services can take place or related services. And that's really important to always look at, what's going on there. So, and plus, the parent signature is really important at this point. There are a couple of times when parent signature, the school must require and must have parent signature. One is for special education evaluations for special education services. Not for the math test on Friday, but if we want to evaluate, does this child have a disability in math? School has to get the parent signature for that. And before that kind of evaluation can take place. The other is after we look at, okay, it looks like, this child's going to qualify for an IEP. Parent, do you give your permission for the school district to provide special education and related services to that child? And your signature is required at that point. That's before we even decide what services are going to be required. It's like, yep, looks like we're going to have to do something here. I'm giving you my permission to develop an IEP. And you give a signature and then go, okay, let's go. That's when your signature is important. Then you start looking at what kinds of services are we talking about, and what is the IEP going to provide for him, and what is his school day going to look like now? Parents can refuse. They can say, yep, we did the test. Looks like he could use services, but no, I want to try other things, and I want to move forward without giving you my permission for special education services. So I refuse to give you my consent. Then the student is in school as a general education student. Parents can revoke or take back their signature. Okay, we're in special education. No, it just is not working for him. And I want to remove my signature that gives consent for services. Parents can do that now. But really think about it and talk with your team about it, because that puts the student into the situation of being classified as a general education student only, without the protections of the IEP. If parents are doing the evaluation and we have this complete evaluation and parents look at the speech part of it or something like that, or one part of it, and they go, who is that child? I don't recognize that at all. I do not agree with that evaluation. Parents have a right to ask for a second opinion, and parents can ask for an independent educational evaluation, IEE, at school district expense, if they disagree with a special education evaluation that was provided through the school district, and they disagree with the school district's findings, they can say, I'm asking for a second opinion at school district expense. Then the parents choose an independent evaluator. The person has to be someone who's qualified to do that kind of evaluation. So a speech therapist cannot do an psychological evaluation. A psychologist can't do a speech evaluation. It has to be someone who's qualified in that field, and it has to be the going rate of the community. School districts are to have a list of independent evaluators that they've compiled that parents can choose from. Parents do not have to choose from that list, but they do have to choose someone who's qualified to do the evaluation. And school districts have already looked at some, outside providers and kind of vetted them. So don't feel that you have to choose from the list, but feel that that list is a good place to start. And you might want to choose from that list. Don't be afraid of the list either. School districts can say, no, our evaluation was really good, and they can request a hearing to prove that their evaluation was a really good one. And parents can only ask for one independent evaluation for each evaluation that they disagree with. So if they get a speech evaluation, then they get an independent speech evaluation. They don't agree with that one. They want another speech evaluation. They get to pay for that one themselves. Schools would not be obligated to pay for that. So just know that you can have a second opinion, but give the schools a fair shot at doing a good evaluation, and generally they do. A functional behavior assessment is looking at that functional performance part of the IEP. When you're looking at IEP, you look at academic achievement and functional performance. Sometimes that functional performance is behaviors related. Some children with autism have behavior concerns. Some children with social emotional needs have behavior concerns. It doesn't matter what your label is. Behavior might be a language that that child's speaking at that time, and you really want to understand it. So a functional behavior assessment is looking at, why does this child behave the way he or she does in this school environment? What's going on to cause this behavior? And then how can we teach this child some replacement behaviors so that their need is getting met, but not with the behavior that they're using right now? Because behavior is communication. It's not just, oh boy, I want to make teachers really mad today. I am going to go in and have really bad behavior because it's so fun to do. It's not. Kids want to learn, and kids want to be successful. Behavior is a language of, I don't know how to do this. I'm frustrated. I don't know how to express it. I need to be taught a way to help me communicate better through my behavior. Eligibility. So parents and schools, decide if there's a need for special education related services. So we look at it, we are going to look at, all the data that's collected and all the evaluations that are determined and presented, and we're going to go forward with that and make sure that we can, have a good school program for this child. Because you can have a disability and not qualify for special education if that disability does not have a significant impact on your ability to learn in the general education classroom. With the So we have a child who has autism. They may or may not qualify for special education because it may or may not have an impact on their ability in the general education classroom. If it does, then we're going to say, yes, this child qualifies for special education supports and services. And what can we do? What services can we add that will help this child access special education so he can access general education? What supplementary aids and services are we going to put into the IEP so that they can be educated in the general education classroom as much as possible? So we're just kind of collecting this information. We're looking how he learns. We're looking at how he interacts with other kids. And then we're deciding, does he qualify or not qualify as a student with a disability? Just because you didn't have good instruction in a subject doesn't mean that you have a disability. And just because you have limited English proficiency doesn't mean you qualify. Just because you speak another language and English is your second language does not qualify you for special education services. It would qualify you for English language services, and it might qualify you for an IEP if on top of that you had a disability. So you can have limited English proficiency and have a disability, and you would qualify for both services at that point. So when we look at this IEP process, we've got, parents give their permission for evaluation, the school district, parents say, yes, you can evaluate to see if something's going on. And I understand that you have 60 calendar days to complete that evaluation. So if you're completing evaluation in 60 calendar days, and if it's a day on the calendar, it counts, then we as a team meet and we decide, yes, this student does qualify for special education, and we did the evaluation, qualifies. Now the team, including parents, you have 30 days, 30 calendar days to complete writing the IEP. Okay, we're going to develop an IEP. We're going to see what works. We're going to try things out. And then we're going to make this IEP document to make sure that we are addressing the student's needs and that he can make progress in school. So there are some required team members, and we're going to go on from there. So the required team members are parents. Listed in the law, number 1 is parents. Parents are required members of this IEP team. Not less than 1 regular education teacher, because the student is a general education or regular education student first. You're a general education student first. You may be a general education student who requires special education supports and services on top of that. But first and foremost, you're a general education student. So the regular education teacher is going to know the curriculum. This is what we learn in 3rd grade. This is what 3rd graders are expected to do. These are the subjects that we'll be covering in 3rd grade. So we really want that expertise of the general education teacher there, because the student is going to be required to make progress in general education. Special education teacher needs to be there. Special education teachers going, I know some, modifications and some accommodations I think would be helpful. I will help teaching and reading. I'm going to help teaching in math or something like that. So they're going to coordinate and work together to educate the student. A school district representative who can kind of sign the check if the check needs to be signed. So someone who knows the resources of the district and can offer, what the district has to offer. And if a speech therapist is required, the district representative needs to be there to, okay that and to arrange it, help arrange it. And then a person to explain evaluation results. So if the child had requires speech therapy, a speech therapist needs to be there to explain that evaluation. It may not be the speech therapist who gave the evaluation. Our state tries really hard to have the same person who gave the evaluation to be the one to explain it, but it's not a federal requirement. It needs to be another speech therapist. So you may be in a big district and you have 3 or 4 speech therapists, and one is available to attend the IEP meeting at this time, and that person can come and explain the evaluation reports that their colleague provided to them. Then we have optional team members. Let's go back to this real fast. These seats need to be filled during the whole meeting. And one person, if the general education teacher needs to leave, another general education teacher needs to come in and sit in that seat. So one thing I wanted to mention too, especially about regular education teachers, when you hit middle school and high school, you have different teachers for different subject matters, and not every teacher is required to be there. One is required to be there. So it might be the English teacher for 9th grade comes to the IEP meeting because the student's in 9th grade, and then that person's going to share the expertise that they have. This is what 9th graders learn, here we go. And I'm going to share with my team what the IEP says after the meeting. So if you really are wanting like the math teacher to be there, you can request that beforehand, and they'll work really hard to work with you on who can be there and who can't be there. But know that not every subject matter teacher is going to be at the IEP meeting, especially middle school and high school. Then we have related service staff. This is optional because not every IEP team requires the same personnel, for one thing. So you might have a speech therapist there, you might have an occupational therapist there, you might have a physical therapist there, you might have a school psychologist there, you might have a teacher for the hard of hearing there, you might have a teacher for vision impairment there. So you might have somebody who's very specific for your student there, or you might have they might not have anyone there because those services aren't needed. So it's going to be individualized according to the student's need, not the program of the district, if that makes sense. So just know that it's going to vary from IEP to IEP, which kind of related staff people are going to be there, if any are going to be there at all. Others who know the student. So if the student is working outside the home in the grocery store, a grocery store manager could come to the IEP meeting if they wanted to. Or if a youth pastor you can invite a youth pastor to come to the meeting because the child is really involved with their church. Or they work a lot in the community, or grandma and grandpa want to be there, or aunt and uncle want to be there, or an outside tutor can come. So others who know the student, or others who parents invite. So a parent may invite a person to attend the IEP meeting with them, and we encourage parents not to go alone because it's a lot to listen to, and it's always good to have somebody else hear the same information. When my son, who has a hearing loss, had an IEP meeting, often my sister would go with me and we would hear different things. But it was always good to have somebody you could talk to about this whole process afterwards, be there. The student, him or herself, can come at any time. The parents want them to come at the age, at the IEP meeting in which that student will turn 15. The student will be sent an invitation to attend the IEP meeting. So at age 15 in our state, in Colorado, we start talking about transition into adulthood. So that's either 8th grade or 9th grade, someplace around there, that year in which that student's going to turn 15. That student is invited to attend the IEP meeting. They can attend the IEP meeting at 3. They can attend the IEP meeting at age 6, 9, 2, whatever. Well, not 2, but they can attend it anytime the parent wants them to. But at age 15, they will be formally invited to attend. Sometimes parents don't want their student to be there for the whole meeting because they have some very sensitive information to share or discuss with the team. But we encourage that the students attend their IEP meetings as much as possible. And it's their life, and the more buy-in you get from a teenager, the better success you're going to have. And they know how they learn, and they have a lot of information to share. And some students even conduct their own IEP meeting, and they run it. And the more buy-in they have, and the more they can join in that conversation, the better it is for them, and the better success they have during this whole IEP process. Sometimes team members need to be excused or may be excused. And if you're having an IEP meeting and maybe it's an annual review and the member's curriculum is not being changed, or really, you're not really talking about that, the parent and the school district agree in writing before the IEP meeting that person not attend, then that person can be excused. If it is the area that's going to be discussed, but they can't attend for some reason, then if they submit a report in writing, here's my report to the IEP team, you know, the parent can decide whether or not that's acceptable. And if the parent consents in writing to the excusal and the school agrees, and the school may say, no, that person needs to be there. Parents going, well, you know, giving them a little slack. Or if the parent says, no, I'm sorry, but we really need to, this is an area of concern for me, and I really want that person to be there because I have some questions to ask that I need clarification for. So I'm not giving my consent. So then the meeting would have to be rescheduled. It's hard in big districts. It's hard in little districts. It's hard for people to get together and find a time when they all can meet. But the more we can work together as a team and cooperate as a team, the better for the student. So just keep in mind that, you know, especially now in this time, when IEPs are being conducted virtually, and that is legal to do, then it is concerning for parents to, you know, have an IEP meeting over Skype or over Zoom or just over the phone. And does that count? Well, the answer is yes, it does count, because the team members are meeting and you can meet virtually. If you're uncomfortable with that, or if you feel like it you know, wasn't a good fit for you, or it didn't, you know, do the trick for you or whatever, you can ask, say, okay, we'll have an IEP meeting virtually. But then when things get back to normal and children are back in school, then I'd like to meet again face to face to make adjustments if we need to make adjustments. So meeting virtually is allowed. It's legal. And it may look a little different right now. IEPs are going to look a little different right now, or this IEP may not look different, but the service delivery model is going to look a little different right now because of the virus and the state mandates that we're obligated to respect and to keep for our own safety and for our children's safety. We should do that. So, flexibility and a little patience is going to go a long way. So carefully consider not allowing people to leave, the IEP members under normal circumstances. Let's consider it's always important that we can have very careful consideration to all the team members and to the student when we excuse members from the IEP team, because their input is really important. And then we have some tips for the meeting. And this is so vital right now in our day and age, this communication. And especially now, and when we will be communicating virtually, maybe for the rest of the school year, maybe not. And some districts may go back, some districts may not go back when our quarantine is kind of lifted. And it's just really important to keep in touch with the school team and to kind of work on how does this work and where do we go from here, and what are you guys looking at and what are you guys thinking about, and just that flexibility and patience is going to be extremely important. Also monitor your emotions, especially now in these trying times. Let's, check in with ourselves to see how we're feeling. But at the meeting too, you want to monitor your emotions. You want to know that everybody's there with good intent. It's not an intent to, just make the child fit into the district's needs, but to really fit the needs of the child. And to build those relationships, because you want to have a good, healthy working relationship with these people for your child's sake and for your child's learning. And the more you can have a good working relationship, then the benefit is going to be your child's. And that's what we're working for, not, don't let your ego get in the way of the progress that your child can make. But also, if you don't understand something, or if it doesn't look like they're looking to meet your child's need, question that, ask about that, look at that. We each see the child, but we each see the child with a different lens. As a parent, you see one child, the most important person in the world to you. It's education, their future, your hopes and dreams are all in this one person. Schools like your child, teachers like your child. They don't love your child like you love your child. They love their own children. But they want to do a really good job, because they wouldn't have gone into teaching to do a bad job at it. No teacher goes into teaching going, okay, I want to really make children miserable and dumb. They just don't. They really want to be successful. And so you're looking at the same issue, but with two different lenses. So just remember that. This is so important. First seek to understand, then to be understood. When we can kind of walk in each other's shoes. And now, teachers are scrambling to provide education and, curriculum to online students, all their students who are online students right now. And parents are scrambling to become the teacher and the special ed teacher and the paraprofessional and the mom. It's a difficult time, and it's a difficult time for each side to kind of look at that. Many of these teachers who are working to do online schooling for their classroom are also homeschooling their own children right now. So it's a crazy time out there. And so communication is so important. Let's be clear, calm, and direct. If something doesn't make sense to you, say, can you explain that in a different way? I don't understand that. What I hear you say is this. I hear you saying you're going to do such and such. Is that correct? What will that look like? So ask a lot of questions. Make sure you understand it. And it's like when I'm talking to my car mechanic and he's telling me things and I'm saying, I know you're speaking English. I have no idea what you're saying. Explain it to me in a way that I can understand. And when you speak their language, then they can do that. So listen and take time to think about it. You are more than welcome to say at an IEP meeting, you've given me a lot of information. I'll get back to you. I want to think about it. We feel much better and much more settled when we do have time to kind of digest information. And we have time to kind of talk with somebody about it. As parent advisors at Peak, we talk with parents a lot about, what the school said. They said this, what do you think that means? And so after you think you understand, it's like a student coming home from school and going, you have math homework. I knew how to do it this morning in math class. I don't know how to do it now. So sometimes when we think about it, we need help in understanding it again. And then come prepared. As an parents, as an IEP team member, it is your job to come prepared and with your own information, your own data. Has a hard time sleeping. Some mornings it's really difficult to get out of bed because of the medication he's on or something like that. And I just want to share that with you because we may be late on days because he can't go to sleep until 3 in.the morning, and then I cannot wake him up before like 8 o'clock. So that's an issue that needs to be worked with the IEP team. And when the team knows that, then they can help the parent and they can help the child in making those adjustments. Be persistent. Be persistent in a nice way. And schools can be persistent in a nice way too, but be persistent. Teachers have, 25 kids that they're thinking about. Parents have one. And so when you look at it that way, you can say, I know I asked you a week ago, to respond to a question I had. Here's my question again. I know you've been busy, but here's my question again. I would appreciate an answer. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't, get your feelings hurt if they don't get back to you right away, but it's your obligation to kind of keep approaching that and I call it nicely nag about your issue, because your issue is important, because your child is your issue. So be persistent, but in a nice way. And also say thank you. Also say, I really appreciate your hard work. Teachers need to hear this right now too. I appreciate your hard work. I know this is difficult for you. I do need some help though in understanding, how do I present this math? How do we do this math? I don't know how to do it. And this is a question that we're hearing right now at Peak. Well, math is one, but how do I teach? I don't know what this means. I don't know what this worksheet, I don't know what you're trying to get at this. So how do I do it? So when parents have those, questions, you need to be persistent so that you can kind of help the child stay focused and make progress. And then kind of, especially now, before the meeting, know your emotions. I'm really frustrated right now because I see how frustrated my child is at school. So I'm going to really try to hold it together, and so I can hear what people have to say. And it's okay to feel emotions. They're natural. I mean, we would be worried if you didn't feel them. And teachers, feel emotions too. and they feel stronger emotions for their own children, because that's the natural progress and that's the natural way to that nature happens. So just recognize it and say, you know, I'm going to put on my business hat. I'm not going to get my feelings hurt all the time. I'm going to move forward in a real productive way. And I want that. I'm going to take a deep breath and we're going to focus and we're going to move forward in a nice way. If you're really angry or sad, go to somebody beforehand or a friend and just have a way that you can vent that so that you can kind of get it out of your system so that you can be heard. We at Peak, we're good ears, so give us a call if you need to do that. Because that building relationships is vitally important for families. It is important to say thank you to the staff. They're there doing their job that they were trained to do in the best way they know how to do it at the time with what they have to do at the time. And sometimes they don't know your child well yet. They do know their curriculum, but they don't know your child yet. And so we're working from home and my little dog had to come in. So just know that they want to do a good job. Give feedback to their efforts and welcome, what they're trying to give you. And then make suggestions. I bet that works for a lot of kids. I don't think that's going to work for my kid because just cannot stay focused when they're on the computer that long or something like that. How can we keep in touch? How can you and I share ideas on helping each other? Me giving you ideas for school and you giving me ideas for home. Will a notebook work? Email? Does email work? Do you want to call me? How does that work? What's going to work for you? And then share how you help your child at home. When my son was in middle school, language was his struggle because of his hearing loss. And it would just take him longer to do homework. And so it was like his principal asked me, how long does he work on homework? I said, about 3 hours a night. And this was a 6th grader. And the principal yelled at me and said, "You're going to make him hate school. Why are you working on homework so long?" I said, "It's your teachers. Why are they giving so much homework?" So we shared and we came to a conclusion, and it was the principal's suggestion that he only do either one subject per night of homework, or he work on homework for an hour to an hour 15, and then I would sign off on the homework saying, we worked this amount of time and he's not going to work anymore. And it was not held against him. That was something that the team and I came up with together. But it was the team's, it was the principal's suggestion that we do that because he didn't want my son to get burned out at school and hate school. So when we ask for help and when we listen to each other, we can be creative in building these relationships. And when you build relationships, then you can come up with creative solutions. So online, you have an IEP preparation packet. And then we suggest that you use that. It's just a helpful little booklet that will kind of walk you through the major kind of points, and you can take notes in there and you can take it with you. And so use that little, preparation packet if you think it's going to be useful for you or something like it, because you want to go in with your agenda, you want to go in with your notes, you want to go in with what, this question must be answered. I do not want to forget it. Oh, shoot, I forgot it. So write it down before you go into the IEP meeting and let the team know this has to be on the agenda. And because it's very, very important for me to get this information and get this here's my burning question. It needs to be answered. Keep records. It's really important as a parent that you keep your own set of records. Once again, you have an individual focus. School has, teachers have multiple, students. You have one. Keep your records and keep them updated, because that way it's really easy to kind of look back and keep track of, oh, I sent you an email in, a month ago, and here was your response. Did you follow through with what you said you were going to do, or something like that? So when you keep records and you have it right in front of you, then it's really easy to keep track of the history and the progress that you're making. Some parents use a notebook and they print off emails and stick them in there. They keep test results in there. They keep copies of the old IEPs in there. Some people electronically keep it all on their phone in a document. However you do it in a way that's comfortable for you, but something that you can really use. So if you're a paper person, get a notebook. If you're an electronic person, do it that way, but do it in a way that makes sense to you and that you can access it when you need to. Then we really, Peak is there to take your calls anytime, and we're working from home, but we're still here and we're still working. So don't hesitate to call Peak if you have a question. We love to talk with you too about some ideas about dealing with this online learning, which is a challenge for every single parent in the state of Colorado, having an IEP or not, and especially parents who have more than one child working through this, being a teacher for all their kids, when nobody had planned on this. It wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't anybody's idea to do this. It just happened, and we have to kind of step forth with our, best effort and know that we're going to get through this, and things will change. And next year, school year is going to start off, and it's going to be nice and healthy, and we're going to move forward in a real positive way. We just have to get through this time right now as best we can. So please, feel free to give us a call. And Pam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shirley. Very soon, as long as all of the technology works, you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording of today's webinar. Please note that version of the recording will not have closed captioning added. As soon as we are able to add captions to the webinar recording, we will post that on our website. Just a friendly reminder, we hope that you've signed up for the entire series and that you'll join us next Wednesday, April 15th from 12 to 1 for content of the IEP. And then the last in our series, implementation and follow-up of the IEP, will be on Wednesday, April 22nd. Shirley, can you change the slide for me? Thank you.
Yeah.
We have quite a few resources at Peak. A lot of them are included in this PowerPoint, like we mentioned, are in the download section, handouts that you can download. So we have the Parent Center Hub, and we have IDA Gov. We have some COVID-19 resources for schools we just put up. The CD website's a great place to look. And some of you might be looking for your special ed director during this time. So we've listed their website here as well. So please look at these resources. They'll be very helpful for you in this situation.
And I just want to add to that, feel free to give your special education director a call, your special education teacher a call. They're more than happy to talk with you during this time and see specifically how your school is handling this whole COVID situation. And look on your school's website for information.
Thank you. Next slide.
You're there.
Thank you. So here's our website. We have our response to COVID-19 on here. So we just wanted you to have that information. It's www.peakparent.org. Our number is 719-531-9444. During this time, we are answering all calls between 9 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. The parent advisors can be reached at parentadvisor@peakparent.org. Next slide. Peak has many
And then,
resources. We offer webinars. We have parent advisors in English and Spanish. We have regional parent connectors. We offer workshops across the state. We have a Speak Out blog. You might want to look at the one we posted yesterday on our website. It was very well written. And don't forget our annual statewide conference, February 18th through 19th, 2021. And just to remind you all, Peak is a nonprofit, and we rely on donations from generous donors like you to be able to deliver webinars like this. Please consider making a donation online at www.peakparent.org/donate. Next slide. Is there any more slides, Shirley?
no, that's it. But please tell them about the IEP, the webinar series coming
Yes,
up.
thank you, Shirley. So to request a certificate of completion, you need to email me, Pam Christie, at pchristy@peakparent.org. That's pchristy@peakparent.org. Again, as you exit the webinar, please take just a moment to complete our evaluation survey as we value your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email very soon with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. And as Shirley so kindly reminded me, we are offering a dispute resolution webinar series starting April 21st. Please go to the Peak website for details. On behalf of Peak Parent Center and today's presenter, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Goodbye.